Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the awesome Kris Mack. Kris is the founder and president of KMACC Solutions, a consulting firm specializing in emotional intelligence and leadership development. Kris is a consultant, a speaker, a coach, and an author. She works with Fortune 500 businesses and mid-sized companies, nonprofits, and universities and educational institutions. Kris believes in the power of women supporting women. She lives in Tampa with her family and loves traveling, practicing yoga in her spare time. Before writing the book and continuing with her wonderful journey of consulting and working with lots and lots of businesses, Kris actually had a very successful career working for a number of blue chip businesses from the likes of Zoll Medical Corporation through to Eli Lilly, through to Merck. And she also studied as well at the University of South Florida. Welcome to the show today, Kris.
Thank you, Leila. I appreciate it. So happy to be with you.
I'm delighted to have you here. And do you know what? I'm so excited to talk to you about your new book, as well as your personal career, your ambitions, your aspirations, why it was that you came to write this amazing book, which I can't wait to read, which has also got such an incredible artwork cover piece on it, which, as I understand, for all of our listeners who have not yet seen a picture of Kris's new book, and I have it here right in front of me, there is the most beautiful picture of Kris, who is stunning as it is. For those who are watching on YouTube, you can see Kris, but she's got this most amazing, beautiful artwork on her back with the title, #No Approval Needed. So, Kris, tell us.
Happy of it.
Wonderful.
That's what it looks like.
That is gorgeous. That is just gorgeous. So why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about, the current projects that you're working on, obviously the book, how this came about and how you decided it would be a picture of your back?
Yeah, all great questions. So initially, probably for the last 20 years, I've wanted to write a book, but it was more of one of those fleeting thoughts that, we have these great ideas. And I think this happens to us all universally. We have a great idea and we entertain it for a moment or two, and then we ghost on ourselves, right? And then we don't give it any attention and we stuff it in the corner. We don't think about it for a long time. And then it resurfaces. We might give it some more thought and we do the same thing. We repeat this pattern of ghosting on ourselves. So this was what was happening to me for like 20 years. I always wanted to write a book. I never really knew what it was going to be about. I thought I was going to do something on the pharmaceutical industry just because I had so much insider knowledge on that. And it turned out, once I started my business and I was interacting with so many brilliant, amazing women from around the world, and I was going through such a big transformation of just life-changing events in my 40s, I thought it would be really cool and fascinating to interview women from around the world. So I basically had two criteria. Raise your hand if you're a woman and you're in your 40s. I don't care where you live. I don't care what you do. That doesn't matter to me. You're a human being. It's fascinating. Let's have an honest discussion. So through LinkedIn and Facebook, I was able to get close to 60 women. In addition to, or included in that, I also interviewed my mother and my grandmother because I wanted, I just felt like their perspective was so important. They shaped my journey, and also the juxtaposition of the generational differences that they've experienced versus women today in their 40s. So that was, pretty special. And for the cover, I wanted something that was going to show some kind of global representation. And I didn't want one woman's face or my face on there because the story is so much bigger than that. So I had seen a pair of hands online, an image of hands, and the continents were painted on them. And I loved it. I was drawn to the colors and just how artistic and creative that was. But the hands belonged to a man. So it was way too masculine. I knew that my hands were going to be way too small to be able to paint the continent. So had to think of a more feminine canvas. So I thought, well, a woman's back would be a great canvas. And I decided to use my back. So I had to find a body paint artist. And I happened to find this incredible artist, Michelle Caudle from Silver Moon Art and Photography. And she happened to live practically in my backyard. And so she took 6.5 hours to paint and photograph my back. And then it ended up on the cover. And I'm so proud of it because I just think it's so creative and so beautiful and brilliant and spicy and bold and all of the things that women are. So.
Wow, what a fantastic story.
Thank you.
And tell me, I can't wait to read the book and obviously hear about all of these inspiring women. Was there something that kind of, I don't know, happened in life or throughout your career that made you think, do you know what, I really want to showcase women specifically? And are there any stories that you can kind of share with our listeners about you and your personal background that kind of led you up to this amazing point where you're releasing this book after the 6.5 hours of back painting that happened?
Yeah, I think in my 40s, my father died, I was like 41, turning 42. And that was a major life transformation. It was very unexpected. It was very tragic. And at his celebration of life, there were about 300 people that came from all different parts of his life, like going back to elementary school, all the way through into his 70s when he passed away. And so, really it was very special that all of these people came. And my sister had a number of good women friends that were there, and I had hardly any. And so it was a life-changing moment for me where I really had to look in the mirror and say, like, this is your fault, because you were so busy being a mom to twins and, working in this demanding career that you put your women friendships in the back burner. And so from that point forward, I vowed to myself that I was going to change that and start, reconnecting with former women friends and finding new ones. And so I've done that over the last few years. So as I started to spend more time with women, I started hearing similar themes emerge, similar journeys, similar stories. And I noticed that even though we have all of this technology, that so many of us feel more disconnected than ever. And as we spend more time with the women in our lives, it fills a void that our children and our partners cannot do. And so it was really enriching. And I started to hear some funny stories and just thought, somebody has to write this stuff down. No one would believe this. And so the book is a celebration of our humanness. It's not just for women, though. I think that, first of all, there's specific chapters in there for men, but so many of the topics are just very human, how we relate to each other, that we have family and we have guilt over work and career. And so many of us are trying to not just work, but make a difference. Once we get into our 40s, it's really important that we're doing something that speaks to our why and feeds our soul. And we talk about relationships and our bodies and sex and libido and marriage and affairs and all kinds of stuff. So it's just very, very human. And the conversations are very real. They were confidential. So I don't reveal any of the women's names in there because I wanted them to feel psychologically safe to be able to disclose whatever was on their mind. And some of the stories are very, very powerful. Some are funny, some are very sad. So, you really get a diverse mix of human emotions as you read the book.
Wow. And I really want to ask about perhaps a couple of little teasers for some of these stories. But before I go ahead and do that and let you maybe think about that for a little while, I really love this topic of humanity and that you're so incredibly passionate about that. I know that you say you're fascinated by how our humanness manifests itself in our daily lives and in our relationships, and that many of us have constructed this persona that is safe to present to the world, and that we might go to these great lengths to kind of hide our flaws and vulnerabilities for others. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that and why humanness has become such a way, and why we all seem to be wanting to strive for this quest for almost impossible perfection?
I mean, I think social media plays into that. I think so often it's really easy to compare, your stumbles to somebody else's highlight reel, and that's not healthy. And so we're all trying to, put this persona out there that we think people want to see of us, and we're not always being honest about, I mean, I know so many people that behind the scenes, they're either miserable at work or they're miserable in their marriages. But if you look at their posts on social media, you would never know. It's the fairy tale, the fantasy that we want everyone to see. And so I'm not fascinated by the facade. I am fascinated by the authentic, by the flaws, by the vulnerability. That to me is the part that makes us human and makes us, so interesting. And a lot of times we see that as a weakness in ourselves and we want to push it away and we don't want others to see that. But that's what helps us to connect. None of us are perfect. Perfect is not real. I'm interested in how you manage with your struggles. And that's what that I'm drawn to. And I think others are too. And so, if we can embrace those parts of ourselves, that helps us to connect on a deeper level with other humans.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm so delighted to see that there are more and more inspirational leaders like yourself and many others that I have the opportunity to speak to, who are really now starting to speak out about challenges, about vulnerability, about the struggles that they've had. Because I think, and I've talked a lot with many guests on the show about success and what success means. And it's surprising to hear that people are willing to say, actually, the success really does not come without the failure. And actually, the failure and the challenging times, the heartbreaking moments of difficulty in life have really been the times that have actually shaped those future successes and really helped along in that path to enlightenment almost.
Yeah. I mean, it's our struggles and how we overcome them that makes the journey of achievement so much sweeter. If we didn't have the struggles, it would be like, meh, I did it. Who cares? But it's because you've struggled and you learned and you gained new tools and you grew that any kind of achievement becomes sweet and sweet enough to enjoy. Without those struggles, it's like, who cares?
It absolutely does. And I can so relate to that. I think, if I look back at kind of my career in life and business and personal life, until I found those true pieces of happiness, I've not known that that's been the right thing until it's come about, because there's been so many wrong decisions before that, even to the point of meeting my fiance. I thought, relationships must be like that, or it's, they're always this way, and actually meet the right person and suddenly everything makes sense, because you kind of can, to a degree, compare and contrast and say, oh my God, this feels so much different, or this business feels like the one, this person feels like the one, because you've encountered those bad times. Otherwise, it's very difficult to actually work out that is, as you so lovely, is that a word? Put it.
We'll make it one.
Sweet. Let's make it a word. Exactly. And success is sweet when it happens, especially after those struggles and those challenging times. So I completely agree with you on that, Kris. So going back to my former question, I know that I don't want you to reveal too much about the book, because obviously I'm hoping all of our listeners are going to go out there and purchase a copy. I certainly am, because it looks incredible. But give us a little teaser about some of the stories, some of the funny moments, or some of the difficult moments, or the hard-hitting interviews that you carried out to really fill the pages of this wonderfully colourful and unique book.
Yeah, I mean, the stories are, one of the things, besides the list of questions that I asked the interviewees, I asked each woman to share a story about something that happened in their 40s. And that could have been something that was a tragedy. It could have been a triumph. It could have been, something that revealed a vulnerability, something that was just hysterically funny, something that was about women, empowering women. They really, I let them go wherever they wanted to go with that. And so I heard a number of stories, and I'll just give you a couple of examples. One, every time I tell it, I just get chills, because I just think it's so powerful, of one human connecting with another, one woman supporting another, and they didn't know each other. So one of the women was on a first date, and she was wearing a white dress, and it was a fancy affair, and she unknowingly started her period and was bleeding through her dress, and she didn't know it. And another woman discreetly came up to her and whispered in her ear and pulled her aside. And this woman that pulled her aside was wearing a scarf because she was undergoing chemo, and she was, covering her bald head. She took her scarf off and wrapped it around the other woman. And I just, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful story of just humanity at its best and women supporting women. And I get so, emotional about it because I just think it's so powerful, and we need more of that. Another story was just a little funnier, but it was still about women coming together. And it was one of the women, I think it was when she turned 40, she and her girlfriends took a limo and they went to dinner and they went to a show, and they were having so much fun that when they got back, they didn't want the evening to end. So the woman whose birthday it was, when they got back to her house, they decided they were going to jump in the hot tub, and nobody had bathing suits. They just jumped in their bra and panties, and they were drinking wine and champagne. And so it's like 2 in the morning, and this woman's husband is calling because he's worried. He doesn't know they're all in the backyard.
And he gets a nice surprise when he comes home.
Yeah, she's like, don't come outside. We're all half naked. And so I thought that was a really cool story. And then there's another story about a woman who describes having a negative self-body image, which I think so many women can relate to at one point in their life. So many of us have struggled with that. And she talks about after she married her second husband, he instituted Naked Saturdays. And so on Naked Saturdays, you have to be naked for like a large part of the day. And she said at first it was so hard because they'd be sitting on the couch and she'd see her stomach bulging over and, with that self-hatred and self-loathing. And then she got to the point where she started to love herself and enjoyed Naked Saturdays. And so she credits him for helping her to love her body for the first time. And a different woman talked about a second marriage and comparing that to the first and the type of sex that they had. And, she said in the first marriage, it was given out of guilt and obligation. Once she found her life mate, she said it was like she'd been playing the wrong sport her whole life. And so again, I just think that, whether you're a man or a woman, you can relate to a lot of this because it's just so very human. And there's a lot of confessions about affairs in there, which again, have been going on since the beginning of time. And it's a very human and taboo topic, but it's real. And I just love talking about authentic things and how they're manifesting in our lives. And, I think what's interesting about that topic is you've got people who it's a black and white issue. And then you've got the people who are like this, these are shades of gray.
But I absolutely love that you're addressing these taboo topics because like you say, we're all humans, we're all flesh and blood at the end of the day. If you stripped everything away, we would be hearts and souls, and that would be it. And so actually, we all need to eat, sleep, have sex, enjoy relationships, all of these kind of things. So whoever you are, whether you're a CEO and a FTSE Fortune business leader, or if you are, in a lowlier position, it really, really doesn't matter. They are stories that people can relate to. And, you've got some really juicy stories in there as well. So I'm sure it'll be a real page turner, and there'll be guys and girls being like, oh my goodness, I wonder what's going to happen next. Did he walk in on all of the naked women? And maybe we should embrace Naked Saturdays. I think I'm going to have a word. Right. I'm going to have a word with my fiance. Yes.
That could be like an international holiday every week or once a month or something. Naked Saturday. I don't know. I think it sounds like a good thing.
I think we should do a shout out for that. So for all of our listeners who are tuning in today, listening to the awesome Kris, we should be embracing Naked Saturdays. So if you are thinking about trying something new or something different or something a little bit taboo, hashtag Naked Saturdays, get it in the diary and embrace your body and happiness. Because why not? Why not?
Hey, this is how we came into this world. This were covered up. We were all naked. I hate to tell you, that's how you came in.
Go back to the birthday suit. I love it.
That's right.
I love it. And whilst we're on the subject of guess being naked, and I suppose being vulnerable, and, you know, also being brave, I guess, as well, because really it takes some real braveness and courage to go out there and be speaking and talking to people about these things. Is there any advice that you could give women and men and anyone out there, our listeners who are listening, any advice on how to be brave, how to really curate inside that courage and those feelings that you can do it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I'm not going to sit here and say that I didn't have any trepidation over this. I absolutely did, and it still comes up. I heard, or I read a quote yesterday. I think it was on LinkedIn, and I can't remember whose post it was, but it was something about, you know, when you confront fear, fear runs away. And so I like that. I also happen to listen to, I love Brene Brown. I'm a huge fan of hers, and she's got that new Netflix special. And she talks about when she first released that TED Talk on vulnerability, and there were some haters that came out, and you know, she really internalized that. It was affecting her negatively. And she talks about watching Downton Abbey for like 8 hours and eating peanut butter. And you know, I think we can all relate that nobody wants to be attacked personally. And then she said she realized that, you know, there was a moment where she realized, you know what, these people are not in the arena. They're not being brave. They don't get to criticize from the cheap seats. And that was super helpful, because I just watched that a couple of weeks ago. And as I was thinking, like, I'm sure there are going to be people who don't like my content because it's taboo, and, you know, maybe they're just super ultra conservative and they think that, you know, it's wrong and I shouldn't be talking about it. You're in the cheap seats. You're not in the arena. I just have to, I'm sorry, like, you're entitled to your opinion, but I just have to dismiss it and not allow that to prevent me from moving forward. But it is interesting. So, you know, you write this book, and when you're writing it, you think you want people to read it. But as people start to read it, and you know they're reading it, it's like, oh, you have these moments that are just overwhelming of fear, because this is forever. It will forever be out there. You can't take it back. And people are, you know, I have stories that I've put in there, personal stories. And so people will know me in a different way. And it's very vulnerable. It feels very vulnerable. But the one thing that I can say to people is nothing magical ever happens inside your comfort zone. So if you want the magic to happen, you've got to leap. And you've got to be strong enough to just say, like, you're doing this for you. And, you know, I didn't write this book to make money. This was a passion project. I did it because it was my calling. I don't know how else to explain it. And I wanted to make it an option for people to have real conversations about topics that matter. So.
That's a fantastic answer. And I mean, you've actually mentioned two really great quotes there that don't criticize from the cheap seats, get into the arena. I think that's brilliant. I've never heard anyone say that. So I think that definitely must go down in the show notes for everyone to read afterwards. And also,
yeah, that's Brene Brown. I can't take credit for that.
Brene Brown, the TED Talk. I will mention this and we'll put it all into the show notes at the end of today. But I also love your point about nothing magical. I love that word magical. There's just something, it conjures up really wonderful, sparkly kind of images. And you're right, nothing magical does ever happen when you stay in the comfort zone. Yeah. I think, you know, for all those listening whom I'm absolutely positive will be very, very inspired by what you've done, and your voice, frankly, Kris, will hopefully be inspired to push themselves out of the comfort zone, out of that little safe bubble, and go out there and make a difference. Because you're right, it is about you. And I think sometimes as women, and maybe also for men as well, I don't want to generalize and say just women there, but really thinking about yourself is not selfish. Sometimes we have this need to want to please, and I had that for so many years, constantly wanting to please other people, wanting to be liked by other people, wanting to feel like my voice would be heard and that I would fit in to society. Well, actually, you're quite right in saying you should embrace yourself, your authentic self. And even if that means putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, do you know what? Who cares? Who gives a damn? Because at the end of the day, that is you. It's exhausting not being yourself as well.
It's exhausting wearing the mask. And, that's where this title came from. I didn't have a title when I was writing the book. I wanted it to organically come from the conversations from the women. And I would make notes about central themes. And when I was done, I looked at them and I'm like, and that's it. That is it. Because by the time we reach our 40s, we are done with the people pleasing. We are done asking for permission or approval. We don't care. We've got to live authentically. We know what we like, what we don't like. And that's where #NoApprovalNeeded came from.
Amazing. And it's a brilliant title. Absolutely brilliant. It's just so unashamed. It's like literally it's out there. It's attention grabbing. And I'm absolutely sure it's going to be a huge success.
Thank you.
So just because we're coming to the end of our time for today, I'm going to summarize just for all of our listeners everything that was talked about. And oh my goodness, there is so much here. I've been scribbling over your piece here, writing lots of notes, and I've written in my book as well. So let me just try and do a quick summary here for all of our listeners. So firstly, I hope that everyone's enjoyed the show as much as I have speaking with Kris. She's just fabulous. And Kris, I'd love to have a catch up with you after the podcast as well today, to speak to you about a couple of things. We're coming to the States next year and I'd love to meet you in person. So I've certainly learned from today's talk to really confront the fear, because when you confront the fear goes away. And the lovely quote from Brené Brown's TED Talk, which again, I'll put the show notes in there. Please do go away and have a little look at that. Don't criticize from the cheap seats. Get into the arena, be bold, be brave, embrace your authentic self, even if that means being vulnerable. Also, don't be scared to confront those taboo topics as well, because like Kris has very rightly said, it can often be really healing. I think the more that we share, the more that we gain, the more that we help others, the more we also personally benefit. And so it's a really nice, mutually beneficial piece there, actually sharing our vulnerability, our challenges, celebrating our successes with others. And I loved the quote. I'm going to quote you here, Kris. Don't ghost on yourself. If you're thinking about doing something awesome and you've been debating it for many years or months or whatever it is, don't ghost on yourself. Just go out there and do it. What is the worst that can happen? Really, nothing magical ever happens if you don't move out of your comfort zone. And on that note, Kris, I'm going to say thank you so much. It's been really inspiring. It's been really encouraging. And I'm sure that all of our listeners who are tuning in today got so much out of that. And, will I'm sure be in touch. So if anyone does have any questions or would like to reach out, make sure that you Google search #NoApprovalNeeded. Kris's brand new book, which is out, all about the women of the world talking about their life in their 40s. So if you're in your 40s, or even if you're not in your 40s, there's stuff that you can learn there. So make sure you get in touch. You can also find Kris online on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to her via the details that will be in the show notes from the end of today's show, if you have any further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kris. My name is Leila McKenzie. You have been listening to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast, now with you weekly on Apple, on Spotify, now on YouTube as well, which is very exciting, or on your favorite podcast app. All of the show notes will be in the details from today's show on www.leilamckenzie.com/podcast, and you can read up there about the awesome Kris. Thank you so much for listening, and I can't wait to see you all again next week. Take care now. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.